Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to one more session on psychology. In today's video, we will be talking about the principles of classical conditioning. But before that, for all those who have joined us for the first time, let me give you a brief introduction of myself. I'm Dr. Zarin Sethna. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been an associate professor of psychology for the last 30 years. I'm now conducting online classes of psychology so that I can reach a large number of students. And with that, let's begin with today's session. Right. So, like I said earlier, today is the part one of our series on learning. And we will be talking about principles of classical conditioning. Now, first, what is learning and why is it so important to study about learning and conditioning? Psychology is a science of behavior. And if we are studying behavior, then why is learning so important? That's because research has shown that a large part of our behavior is learned. Okay. When we are born with instincts, we are born with intellect, we are born with personality. But a large part of how we behave is what we have learned while growing up. Okay. And if a large part of our behavior is learnt, then in order to understand behavior, it is important to understand learning. What exactly is learning? How did all this learning take place? Once you have learned, will it remain with you forever? Will you forget? Will you relearn something? Okay. How do you learn the right and wrong, good and bad? So to understand human behavior as a psychologist, it is extremely important to understand learning. And if you are a student of psychology, then you will be studying this topic on learning and conditioning right from your undergraduate years to your postgraduate years also, irrespective of which specialization you take up. This is one topic which will keep recurring in every academic year and probably every semester also. And because this is such an important topic, we are going to be making a series of on this topic. Today, we will limit ourselves to only one type of learning called classical conditioning. But before that, we need to learn the definition. So we are going to talk about two terms over here, learning and then something called as conditioning. So what exactly is learning? Learning in psychology, we define learning as a relatively permanent change in behavior due to practice or experience. Now, what do we mean by this definition? Let's take each word and try to understand it. First, it's a relatively permanent change in behavior. Change in behavior, keyword over here, which means you only consider some learning to have taken place if there has been some change in the behavior. The change could be physical change, like for example, you learn a sport, okay, or you learn dancing, you learn how to drive, you learn swimming, okay. So you have learned some new physical activity, change in physical behavior. It could be change in mental abilities, cognitive. Like when you do your studies, you're learning maths, you're learning tables, okay? You're learning the capitals of different countries. All that is cognitive learning, okay? Some changes taking place in terms of knowledge. You have gained knowledge. Change could also be emotional, okay? You learn emotions, you learn to love different things, you learn to dislike certain things, you learn fear, you learn anger. And we'll see how we learn emotions in the later part of the session today itself. So basically, some change has to take place in behavior, okay? What type of change? This change is relatively permanent. What do you mean by relatively permanent? Relatively, more or less, approximately. Meaning, some learning will change your behavior forever. Some learning will change your behavior for some time, but after that it will be forgotten. Okay? So it depends on various factors, age and what you're learning and your interest and reasons for learning. Okay? All that will decide that whatever you are learning, will it remain with you for a very, very long time, or is it going to be forgotten after some time? And that is why we use the word relatively, more or less permanent. Where is all this change in behavior coming from? It is coming due to practice or experience. To learn certain things, you need to practice again and again, like mathematics. Okay, you need to practice so many times before you finally understand the formula. Or all your physical activities, like I said earlier, dancing, driving, swimming, okay, singing. You need to practice a number of times till you really become good at it. Sometimes you don't need to practice. Sometimes one single experience is enough. Like, for example, if a child touches fire, okay, if a child places his or her hand on something which is burning, say a gas stove, okay, the child is going to be burnt and it's going to be an extremely painful experience. That one single experience will teach a child never to go near fire again, never to touch anything that is hot. Okay, so sometimes you need to practice a lot in order to learn, but sometimes one or two experiences are enough to teach you a lesson. Okay, learning is a very broad process of acquiring knowledge. Okay, there are various ways in which learning can take place. There are many, many different types in which learning can happen. Okay, now if you are a student of psychology, in your syllabi, in your textbooks, you will usually see the word conditioning more often compared to learning. In fact, your name of your chapter itself will be learning and conditioning. Okay, and conditioning is going to be used more often. So what exactly is conditioning? Conditioning is a very specific method in which learning is taking place. Okay, so conditioning is just one way in which you are going to learn certain behaviors. Usually, conditioning happens due to association or reinforcement. Now, what do you mean by these two words, association and reinforcement? Association is linking, coming together. Okay. Usually, some words go together. Cup, saucer, black, white, up, down, dark, light, day, night. See, when I use one word, immediately the next word comes to your mind because we usually talk about them together. Name, address. See, it comes together. So when two events or two people or two thoughts or any two things keep occurring together, they are constantly associated with each other, you are learning one behavior because it is associated with another behavior. We'll talk about this in much greater detail later on. Some learning takes place due to reinforcement. Are you going to be rewarded or are you going to be punished? What is the reaction of the opposite person to your behavior? If I wear a new dress and I receive lots of compliments from all my friends and people around me, that's a reward for me. Chances are I'll repeat that dress more often. But suppose I wear a new dress and suppose people give me comments like, you're looking a little older in this, or you're looking overweight in this, or the color doesn't suit you. Okay, if this is the kind of reaction I'm getting, chances are I'm not going to repeat that dress very often. Okay, so reinforcement basically means what I am getting in return for my behavior. We will talk about this also much later. Okay, so we are done over here with the definition of learning and conditioning. Now, today we are going to talk about classical conditioning. But you absolutely cannot talk about classical conditioning without talking about this one very, very important person, Ivan Petrovich Pavlov. Once again, if you're a student of psychology, and even otherwise, even if you're not a student of psychology, I'm sure everybody has, if you're interested in human behavior, then I'm sure all of you all have heard about Pavlov. Okay. Now, it's important to understand who Mr. Pavlov was. Now, Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, as the name itself tells you, was a Russian person, and please look at the slide. He was a neurologist. Okay, he was actually a medical doctor. He was a neurologist. Very interesting, because he's a medical doctor, he's a neurologist, and we are talking about him in psychology. Why we are talking about him in psychology, and why is Pavlov important to us for psychology, you will see very soon. Now, Pavlov was an amazing scientist, okay, amazing, and he has done amazing research in the field of medical science, all right. In fact, so good that Pavlov was constantly nominated for Nobel Prize from 1901 to 1903. So 1901, 1902, 1903, all 3 years he has been nominated for the Nobel Prize. However, he did not win it. He won it in the 4th year. So 4 continuous years there is nomination. Last year, 1904, he gets Nobel Prize. And what is he getting Nobel for? He's getting Nobel for his work on physiology of digestion. Now, why is this important for us over here in psychology? Pavlov was basically not studying anything related to psychology. He was not studying anything related to behavior. Okay, he was actually studying digestion. Okay, and he was largely interested in the role of saliva. You know, the saliva, the liquid in your mouth, the role of saliva in our digestion. Okay, but like most discoveries in different fields of science, very accidentally, he discovers a completely new field which we today call classical conditioning. So what did Pavlov find out? What Pavlov did, and what usually happens in science experiments, is when you're doing research, you're usually using animals as subjects, okay? So you use dogs, you use mice, you use birds like pigeon, okay? Even cockroaches, okay? So we usually conduct our experiments on these kind of organisms. Pavlov was conducting his research on a dog, right? So dog used to be brought in the laboratory, and the dog was tied so that it doesn't move around. Okay, there is no torture. Please remember, there is no torture, but the dog is made to stand in a particular place. Food was given to dog. Okay, now if you have seen dogs, or in general most animals, when you put food in front of them, they start dripping saliva. Okay, now this is common with all of us, even human beings. Okay, when you see food, particularly food which you like, okay, your mouth starts watering. What do you mean by watering of mouth? Your body is producing saliva. Okay, it's just that we human beings are, civilized and cultured, and we are now living in a society. So when that happens, we shut our mouth and we gulp down the saliva. We don't allow it to drip out. But for animals, they don't have to follow any such social rules of etiquette. They don't need manners. And therefore, if you look at animals, you place food in front of them, the mouth is open and the saliva simply starts dripping out. Okay. Even with human babies, very tiny babies who have still not learned the rules of society, you see saliva dripping down. Okay. So Pavlov had a dog coming in the laboratory, and food was shown to the dog. Obviously, like any other living creature, the dog started salivating. And there was a device which measured how much saliva was produced. So there was a test tube which collected all the saliva coming out of the dog's mouth, and it was measured that how much saliva the dog produces. Okay. Now, usually what happens in laboratory experiments is you set up the entire equipment. Okay, whatever is your setting, we come up with the setting, and then to signal that okay, we are now ready and we are now starting with an experiment, to signal, usually you give some sign. Okay, no, so in this case they rang a bell. So the bell would ring, which was a signal that okay, now the experiment should begin. So the bell rings and then someone would bring food. Usually it was around 5 seconds later. Okay, so by the time the bell rings, somebody is already ready with the food plate. So that person would come and present the food in front of the dog, and the dog would start salivating, and they would collect the saliva and they would test, they would measure how much of it was there. Okay. Now, obviously, if it's a research, then you're not doing this once. You're doing it many times, 5 times, 10 times, 15 times. You keep doing it. Okay. So every time the experiment was being conducted, they would set up the entire table. The dog was placed on that table. All the measuring device was in place. Then the bell rings, food comes, dog starts salivating. Okay. After doing this for many times, Pavlov and his team saw something very shocking, very surprising. A time came when, as soon as the bell was rung, dogs started producing saliva and started looking here and there for food. Okay. Remember, only the bell has gone. Food has not yet come in front of the dog. But the dog is already behaving as if the food is there. The dog is showing signs of expectation. It's like the dog is like, I know the food is going to come now. Okay. Now, this was an amazing point for Pavlov, because something absolutely unexpected had happened, and very unintentionally, unexpectedly, he had come up with an amazing discovery. And this is where our understanding of learning took an amazing turn. Okay. Pavlov realized that what had happened was, because there was bell and food, this constant pairing, or what we call association, this constant association of bell and food, the dog had learnt. A time came when the dog realized that if the bell rings, food will come. Okay. And that's where we realize that, oh, learning has taken place. Okay. So this was a little background about Pavlov and how important Pavlov is for us students of psychology. Now, just like Pavlov, there are two very important people. They are both American psychologists. Okay, now Pavlov was a Russian. Pavlov was a Russian, remember? And Pavlov was a doctor. He was a medical doctor. Very excellently, he came up with this whole concept of, learning by association. But when Pavlov published his research, it became very popular. Okay, and psychologists all over the world got very interested. And it caught the fancy of these two people, John Brodus Watson and Rosalie Rayner. Okay. Now, both of them are American psychologists. J.B. Watson was already an established, popular, well-known psychologist in America. Rosalie Rayner was his assistant, his student, and later his assistant. Okay. Now, when they heard about Pavlov, they got interested in this whole area, and they conducted what is today very famously known as Little Albert experiment. Now, what is this Little Albert experiment? So, this Little Albert, because Albert was a baby, 9-month-old baby, admitted in a hospital for some ailment, okay, some unrelated ailment, and he was admitted in a hospital, okay. And J.B. Watson and Rosalie Rayner decided to conduct a simple experiment on this child. Because the child is only 9 months old, we use the word little. So, Little Albert. Okay. Now, what did they do? Albert was placed in a room filled with lots and lots of toys. Okay. There are many toys, usually what you would give to a 9-month-old baby. And the child is surrounded with all the toys. Now, like any other child, as soon as the baby sees the toys, the baby starts crawling. So Albert started crawling towards most of the toys. Okay. Now, amongst those toys was a soft, fluffy, white color rat. Okay. It was a rat toy, fluffy and white and large. Okay. After playing with all the toys, Albert is attracted to that white fluffy rat, and Albert starts crawling. The moment Albert tries to reach that toy, a white color toy, JB Watson and his team make a large bang, okay, something like a bursting of a balloon type, okay, or a cracker, bursting of a cracker. A large, scary sound is made, okay. Now, obviously, it's a 9-month-old baby. So, when that sound is created, the baby is startled, the baby is shocked, and the baby starts crying, okay. Immediately, the baby is picked up, given away to the parent, and the baby is comforted, okay. Later on, again the same cycle starts. So again they put the baby in that room. Again the toys, baby starts playing with toys. And as soon as the baby is reaching that white color rat, that big noise is made. Okay, they create that large noise. Once again the baby screams and scared, very scared, startled, starts crying. And this happens repeatedly. Okay, so every time the baby was trying to approach that white color red, that sound was created, baby would be scared. What happened after a few trials? Most of you must have guessed by now. After a few trials, they noticed that when they kept little Albert in that room, Albert was very comfortable and pleasant only till it saw that white rat. But the moment it saw that rat, it did not go towards it like earlier. In fact, it turned around and started running, okay, and started crying. Okay, Albert started showing signs of fear, started crying, okay, and started moving away from it. Same thing happened over here, what happened with Pavlov's experiment. Albert had learned to be scared of that white color rat. It was just a toy. It was just a soft, fluffy toy. So why was Albert scared of that toy? The toy was not scary, but we paired that strong noise, scary noise, with that toy. Every time Albert went close to the toy, the large sound came which startled Albert, made him scared. And now Albert associated his feeling, his fear, with that rat. Okay? This experiment is a classical experiment, a pioneering experiment, which shows that a lot, in fact, almost all our fears are learnt. When we are born, we are not scared of darkness. We are not scared of lizards or cockroaches or reptiles. We are not scared of anything. A human baby is not scared of anything. Fear is learnt. When a baby tries to go close to a cockroach, some adult in the family screams and shouts and picks up with the baby. Okay, for the safety, for the baby's safety, right? But when this happens repeatedly, the baby learns that this is something I have to be scared of. Okay, so Watson's experiment showed us that fears, emotions can be learned, and they are learned. Now, something very interesting also was seen. We realized that now little Albert had become scared of that white fluffy toy. But what they did not realize, which they found out later, was that Albert started showing signs of fear to anything which was white and soft. So, soft white cotton, Albert used to be scared. Any old person with white beard, Albert used to be scared. Albert was scared of Santa Claus. Albert began showing signs of fear with anything which was white and which looked soft. So not only had Albert learned to be scared of that particular toy, Albert had also learned to be scared of everything else which looked white and soft, because it reminded Albert of that particular fear. Same thing happens with all of us. Okay, when one person reminds you of another, you start experiencing that same emotion. We will talk about this in a few minutes. So it was very important to introduce you to these pioneers in psychology. You know, people like Pavlov and Watson and Rosalie Rayner. These are the people who are pioneers, and their work is what helped shape our understanding of psychology and human behavior that we have today. Let's go back to our main topic of discussion, classical conditioning. Now, what you see on this slide, and see if you can see the diagram down there, this is what that experiment looked like. So this is how a dog is tied down. I remember I told you, please don't feel that you are torturing the dog. There is no torture or pain over here. You are just tying a dog loosely with bells so that the dog remains steady in one place for a few minutes. Otherwise, it would run away. Okay. And can you see over there? There is a table where the food is going to be placed. It's already there. There is a bell which rings over there, right? And there is a equipment connecting the dog's mouth from where the saliva would come. And it is going to be, all the saliva is going to be collected in the test tube down below. Okay, so this is what that setup looked like. Now, how does classical conditioning take place, or how does learning by association take place? Learning by association is based on a simple relationship between stimuli and response. Okay. Now, what is stimulus and response? Stimulus is something that happens to us. Response is our reaction to it. Okay. So, if I ask you a question and when you give me an answer, my question becomes the stimulus, your answer becomes a response. Okay. When a mosquito bites and when you tap it and push it away, that bite is a stimulus. Your reaction is a response. Okay. I repeat once again, stimulus is what happens to us. Response is our reaction. Okay. Now, entire classical conditioning is based on this simple stimulus-response relationship. All right. Now, when you talk about stimulus and response, there is something called as unconditional stimulus and unconditional response. Now, what is this unconditional word? Conditional means something which is learned. Okay. When you learn something, it is conditional. When I was born, I did not know ABCD and 1, 2, 3, 4. That was taught to me. I learned it. So it is my learned behavior. Okay. Conditional behavior. But even when I was born, I was showing some natural behavior, like blinking my eyes, after every few seconds. You don't have to teach a baby that you are supposed to blink eyes. It comes naturally. Okay. When a mosquito bites me, I have to push it away. You don't teach this. It comes naturally. When I'm feeling an itch, I scratch it. It comes naturally. So some behaviors are unlearned or natural or unconditional. Okay, some behaviors are unconditional. So unconditional stimulus, something that happens naturally, will produce unconditional response. So when a natural stimuli takes place, I give my natural response. Something goes in my eye, it starts watering. Both are natural. Something accidentally went in my eye started watering, I started blinking. Nobody has to teach you this. It's a natural reaction. Something is troubling you in your throat, you start coughing. Natural reaction. Okay. So natural stimuli will produce natural responses. Unconditional stimuli gives you unconditional response. But certain behaviors are learned. If it is a learned behavior, then you call it conditional. So conditional stimuli gives you conditional response. Okay. Something that has been taught to me and I am now learning it. Like I gave you the example earlier of A, B, C, D and 1, 2, 3, 4. I did not know that naturally. It was taught to me. Okay. So it was taught to me by repeated learning, right? Every single day in your nursery and KG, your teachers and your parents kept on teaching you A for apple, B for ball and so on till you finally learn the entire series of alphabet, right? So natural stimuli give you natural response. Okay, now this is the most basic of classical conditioning. Let's see what happened with our Pavlov's dog. So what happened with Pavlov's dog? Remember I told you, you set up, the dog is already there and the bell rings. As soon as the bell rings, within 5 seconds or so, food is placed in front of the dog and the dog starts salivating. So what happened in the first stage? Please pay attention to the slide in front of you. Food was given and dog starts salivating, which is absolutely natural. You give food to any dog on the street and this is what that animal will do. You give food, the dog will produce saliva. It's an absolutely natural way to react. Okay. And that is why in this experiment, food will be called as unconditional stimulus. US is short form for unconditional stimulus. It is not learned. It is not conditioned. So it is natural. It is unconditional stimulus. Food will give you salivation. Dog will start salivating. It's a completely natural response, not learned. You don't have to teach this to a dog. And therefore, we call it UR, unconditional response. Okay. Look at the next line. The bell comes. After 5 seconds, the food comes. And then the dog starts salivating. Now, what is bell? Bell is what we call as CS. CS, conditional stimuli. Now, you start ringing a bell in front of any dog walking on the road. It will show surprise. It will show shock. It will show fear. But it will definitely not salivate. Okay? If you ring a bell next to your dog, it will not salivate because bell is a auditory stimuli. It has nothing got to do with food. So the dog is not going to expect food. But over here in the laboratory, what happened? The bell came and then the food came. Now, first few times when, the bell rang, the dog showed no response. The dog is just standing there, okay, doing nothing. But immediately after the bell came food. And when this happened repeatedly, the dog realized that, oh, the bell comes, after that the food comes. And therefore, now bell becomes the conditional. The dog learns about the bell. This bell is now a signal for the dog that if bell comes, food will come. Bell is something it has learnt. It is a conditional stimuli. Food is still a natural stimuli, unconditional. And now the dog starts producing salivation. After many, many trials, only bell itself is enough to produce salivation, right? So as soon as the bell rings, salivation happens. Now look at the third line on your slide. Bell is a conditional stimuli. It is a learned stimuli. But the dog is still producing salivation. Look at the responses. All responses are the same. Salivation. You show food, dog salivates. You give bell, dog salivates. Response remains the same. Stimuli has changed. Earlier, the dog was responding to food, but now the dog is responding to bell. Earlier, the dog was responding to something natural. Now, the dog is responding to something that is learned. Okay, that is how learning has taken place. So, now bell becomes a conditional learned stimuli and this salivation is now conditional response. It is a learned response. Okay, so now pay attention to the last line. What happened is because US and CS, because unconditional stimulus and conditional stimulus are constantly linked, repeatedly linked together, your CR and UR become similar. So the response that the dog was giving naturally, now the dog is giving the same response to the learned stimuli also. Are you getting me? Let me give you one more example once again with a dog. Suppose you have a pet dog at home, okay? And every day after you go back home from college in the evening, you take the dog out for a walk and you play with the dog in the playground. Okay. If you're doing this every day, the dog learns. The dog will learn. A day will come when, as soon as you enter the home, the dog will come running to you, your pet dog will come running to you, and the dog will go and stand near the main door. Okay. The dog knows that now it is time for me to go out because this person has come who takes me every day to play. Okay. Is it only happening with animals? It happens to all of us. Suppose your parents come home from office at 6 o'clock and they want you to be, they want the house to be neat and clean and you should be studying. Okay. So what will happen? It is very possible that if you are little careless, you come back home by afternoon, the house is going to be, shabby, things thrown here and there. But if it is around 5:30, you know that by 6 o'clock, both my parents will start coming one after another. So what do? You quickly start cleaning up. Okay. So your house may remain little untidy till 5:30. But by 5:30, you are on your best behavior. You clean up, you dress up, house is now clean. And by the time it is 6 o'clock, you're sitting on your study table with books open. This is still classical conditioning. It is still classical conditioning. Okay. You have learned that this time, this behavior is supposed to be shown. If you are a person who travels regularly, either for school, college, or employment, suppose every day you are catching a train or a bus or any public transport at 8 o'clock in the morning. Suppose your particular transport comes at 8 o'clock at particular station. You learn that every day at 8 o'clock, my bus or train comes. What do? You try to be at your stop before 8 o'clock because you have learned that at 8 o'clock, my train or bus comes. Okay. These are all examples of classical conditioning that we have learned and we are practicing in everyday life. When two things keep coming together repeatedly, you will learn one because of another. Okay. I'll also give you some more interesting examples. A lot of us may not believe in superstition. Okay. We are all 21st century people and educated and we pride ourselves on, I don't believe in superstition. And yet, a lot of us will still have, something like, this is my lucky shirt, or this is my lucky dress, or this is my lucky pen, or that auntie is unlucky. Okay, we do have these kind of idiosyncrasies. Okay, how did something become lucky or unlucky? Perhaps because of classical conditioning. So it is very possible that I use one particular pen for my examination and I got very good marks. My results were very good. And again for my next exam and my next exam, I somehow kept on using that pen. I used that same pen to write my project and I got lovely remarks from my teacher. Okay. I used that same pen to draw something and I got lovely compliments. Okay. Now, obviously that pen has nothing got to do with it. It is your talent, your hard work, right? And yet you associate happy responses with this pen. So very slowly that becomes your lucky pen. Now what will happen? Next time you have an exam, you'll say, I want to take my lucky pen. Okay. Obviously that pen is not going to give you good marks. But slowly you have started associating it with good marks. Same thing happens with lucky shirt or unlucky shirt. Okay. You wear a particular dress and unfortunately that day you fall down. Okay. And you mess up yourself. You wear that same dress again after 10-15 days and you have your viva in college and it goes very badly. Okay. Very disappointing performance. You wear that same dress after a few days for an interview and you're rejected in an interview. Slowly, that dress becomes your unlucky dress. Every time I wear that dress, something goes wrong. Again, there is nothing wrong with the dress. Even you know that. But somehow, every time you wore that dress, unfortunately, something went wrong for different reasons. But that association happened. We do that with people also. Lucky neighbor, unlucky neighbor. Every time I see this person, something good happens. Every time I see that person, something bad happens. That is how we develop favorite uncles and favorite aunties, and we dislike a few people. A lot of it comes from classical conditioning. What I want you to do is, after the session is over, think about all these lucky and unlucky charms that you have in your life and see if you can find out how it was created. If you think hard enough, you'll realize there was a lot of classical conditioning taking place over there. Okay. Now, there is something very interesting called as extinction and spontaneous recovery. Now, what Pavlov did was, once they realized that, okay, the dog has learned to salivate with bill, then Pavlov said, and he had this idea that what if we give only bell, but we don't give food? Okay, so we give bell to the dog, but no food will come. Okay, now you guess and tell me what would happen, right? So what happened the first time was the bell came. All right, now because the dog had already learned that okay, the bell comes and the food comes, the dog starts salivating and it starts looking here and there and starts sniffing for food, looking around for food. Food doesn't come. Food doesn't come. Okay. And after some time, the dog just settles down, realizing, oh, the food didn't come. And then it happens a second time and third time and 10 times and 15 times and so on. After many, many times, what did Pavlov and his team notice? After many trials, now the dog was salivating less and less. So first time when the bell rang, there was a lot of salivation, But after 10th time, after 20th time, that salivation was still there, but it was less and less and less. Okay. So slowly, it was like dog was learning that, oh, the bell comes, but now I'm no longer getting food. So that hope is there that maybe the food will come. So a little bit of salivation comes because there is that learning has already taken place. But the dog also knows at the back of the mind that, oh, last time I didn't get food, maybe I'll not get it this time also. So slowly the salivation started reducing. It became less and less and less. And finally a time came when the bell rings, but dog shows zero response, nothing. The dog doesn't look out for food. The dog doesn't try to smell or sniff. And definitely there is no salivation. This is what Pavlov called as extinction. Extinction. Extinct, to go away. Like we use the word today, dinosaurs are extinct. Okay, what does it mean? It means today you have no dinosaurs anywhere on the planet. Okay, when something is lost forever, you call it extinct. Over here, why are we using this word extinction? Because the behavior which was learned is now gone. Okay, so the dog had learned to salivate at bell. Now that behavior is lost. Now you ring the bell, the dog is not showing any response. Okay, so once again, please go back to your slide. Please see the first box written over there on extinction. Diminishing of condition response till it appears that it is forgotten. So like I said, salivation became less and less and less. Okay, so it is diminishing. The response is becoming less. Every time the response becomes less and less till it appears to be forgotten. Please remember, we are not saying the response is forgotten. It is only appearing. It looks like the response is forgotten. And why are we using this word appears? You will see in some time. How do you write it in the formula type? So the bell comes, but now there is no food, which means conditional stimulus is coming, but that unconditional, that natural stimuli is not coming. Bell is still there, but that natural stimuli which was producing saliva is absent. So when there is conditional stimuli, but now there is no natural stimuli, unconditional stimuli, slowly extinction will take place. Now there is no salivation. Okay, now there is no response coming. So you had earlier, you taught the dog to salivate at the sound of the bell. Now you teach the dog not to salivate at the sound of the bell. Okay. Or in other words, first there was learning taking place. Now it is unlearning. Let us take human example. I gave you the example of your parents coming home in the evening at 6 o'clock. Okay. So today again, around 5:30, you tidy up yourself, you tidy up the whole house and you're sitting and studying, showing your parents that, oh, I am a good person, right? But today, your parents are late. Instead of coming at 6, they came at 6:30. Okay. You were on your guard. You waited till 6:30 till they came because you don't know any time they will walk in. Okay. Tomorrow, what do? Again, at 5:30, you are ready with everything and you wait. Again, tomorrow, parents don't come at 6, they come a little after 6:30. And now this becomes every day. What will happen after 15 days, 20 days? You will slowly become careless. By 5:30, you will not start tidying up. So if you're watching something on your mobile or if you're watching something on TV and you see 5:30, you'll not get up. You'll say, it's okay. Parents don't come at 6 these days. They come after 6:30. So let me finish off some more, 15 more minutes I'll watch on TV and then I'll start tidying up the house, right? You are unlearning what you had learned earlier. Okay. That is extinction. Okay. So extinction part I hope is clear. Now, when this happened, when the dog stopped salivating, okay, at the sound of the bell, now Pavlov and his team does not know what to do. Because see, don't forget, they were basically medical science students, right? They were all doctors and they were studying digestion. They were basically never psychology people and they were not interested in studying behavior, correct? This happened absolutely accidentally. So by now, their digestion part was understood. The role of saliva in digestion was understood. So now they did not know what to do with this dog. So then Pavlov said, let the dog go. Now what do you mean by let the dog go? Now you must understand this, that in science, pure science or social science, when you use animals or birds for experiments, you don't just go out on the road and pick up an animal. Okay. There are proper agencies which supply animals to you, right? So there are agencies which you have to place an order that I will require 2 sparrows for my experiment, or I will require 2 rats for my experiment, or I will require a dog for my experiment. You place an order and they supply. Okay. So when Pavlov said, now I don't know what to do because now the dog is not salivating at the bell and I don't have any more anything else to do, they send the back dog to the laboratory agency, wherever it came from. Okay. After a few days, for whatever reason, Pavlov wanted to, restart this experiment. So they again asked the agency to send the same dog, that please send the same dog to us and we want to work some more. Okay. And then something very, very interesting was noticed. As soon as the dog came to that same laboratory, and when the dog looked at the laboratory, and when the dog saw Pavlov, and when the dog saw that table where it was standing, okay, the dog showed signs of recognition. The dog started smelling and it was showing signs like, oh, I remember this place. And the dog started salivating. Okay. Now this is surprising because forget food. Not even bell had been sounded. There is no bell, no food. And yet the dog starts producing saliva. What does this show? This shows that, remember our definition of learning? Learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior. What you learn once, you never permanently forget. Some part of it will remember with you, will stay with you forever. And that's exactly what was proved over here. When the dog comes back after a long absence, it immediately remembers what it had learned originally. The original teaching was there. And therefore, the dog showed signs that, oh, I remember this place. This is where I got my food. When dogs started showing these signs, they immediately sounded the bell. At the sound of the bell, dog produced a lot of saliva. Okay. This is what we call as spontaneous recovery. There are two words, spontaneous, on its own, instantly, absolutely unplanned, something which happens on its own, instantly. Okay. Recovery, you are recalling or recovering what you had forgotten. So you thought that you had forgotten something. You hadn't. A little revision and it comes back to you. No? It's like you may today think that, oh, whatever I studied in school, I forgot. Oh, no, 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 no. You have not forgotten. Go back and open your 6th standard, 7th standard textbook. Just one reading and all your memories will come rushing back. You will immediately be able to remember, oh yes, I remember when this chapter was being taught, teacher had said this and teacher had given that example. That is what you call as spontaneous recovery. In spontaneous recovery, there is reappearance. Remember, I told you the word appear. It appears that we have forgotten. It is only an appearance. You have not actually forgotten. You think you forgot. So now it is reappearance of extinguished conditional response after a pause. So after a break, if you go back to that stimuli, your response will come back on its own. It's like naturally the response is coming back, showing that whatever you have learned once will remain with you forever. This is what we call as extinction and spontaneous recovery. Going further ahead, something more interesting. Higher order conditioning. Now, what is higher order conditioning? Again, Pavlov thought, fine, we have taught the dog to, salivate at the sound of the bell, which is not a natural behavior. We have trained the dog to do that. Suppose we do something else. So now what they did was bell, but before the bell came light. Okay, so they showed light to the dog. All right. Now, what do you think would the dog do when you show light? Blink, like all of us. Suddenly I show you a flashlight, you start blinking, but you don't do anything else. So first time when the light was shown, the dog just blinked, but nothing. 5 seconds after the light came the bell. As soon as the bell came, salivation started. 5 seconds after the bell, food comes. As soon as food comes, there is more salivation. Okay. So this happened many, many, many times. After many times, now the dog is learning this, that, oh, first the light comes, then the bell comes, then the food comes. So what happened? Yeah, you guessed it right. As soon as the dog saw the light, immediately salivation started. It increased with the bell and then it increased more with food. Okay. Pavlov went one step ahead. Now they showed a card. Okay, just a plain simple card to the dog. What did the dog do when they saw the card for the first time? Nothing. Second time, nothing. But what happened was, card comes. After 5 seconds, light comes. When light comes, the dog shows little salivation. Then comes bell, more salivation. Then comes food, even more salivation. Okay? And now what happens is, after many trials, the dog sees the card. It knows that after the card will come light and bell and then food. And therefore, salivation starts at the card stage itself. This is what we call as higher order conditioning. You are learning more and more, higher and higher and higher. You are progressing with your learning. How did we learn language? We started with simple ABCD. After ABCD, we came up with smaller words, CAT cat and RAT rat. And then we came up with small sentence. I am a boy, I am a girl. And then you came up with paragraphs. I am a girl, I am 5 years old, I go to this school, I am in KG. Till you reach the level where you can read an entire novel and understand it. See, slowly, step by step, you learned so many behaviors. All your behaviors have been learned like this. You start with basics and then you move on to more and more and more with association. Okay. If you look at this big box in the side below, You will see a real life example. So the example tells you that most children love ice cream, right? So if there is an ice cream truck, if there is a truck which brings ice cream, as soon as you see that truck, the child shows happiness because the child knows, oh, this truck is carrying ice cream, I'm going to get ice cream now. So truck becomes the conditional stimulus and the child's happiness becomes the conditional response. Ice cream is unconditional stimulus. Every child in this world, most children at least in this world, love ice cream. So ice cream is unconditional, but truck is conditional. The child is being happy with the truck because truck is associated with ice cream. Now suppose the truck makes a music, the horn is musical. So every time that musical horn is heard, the child rushes to the window and sees the truck. What happens? That music itself is making the child happy. That music becomes one more conditional stimulus. Then the child sees the truck, second conditional stimulus. Okay. Later on, the child sees the logo on the truck, and therefore every time the child will see that logo anywhere, on somebody's t-shirt, on painted on a wall, anywhere, that logo will remind the child of ice cream. Even that music, if the child listens to that music anywhere, it will remind the child of ice cream and it will make him happy. See, this is how we learn emotions. Remember little Albert experiment? We taught Albert to be scared of something. Over here, we are teaching a child to be happy by something. That's how we learn emotions also. So this is higher order conditioning. We are moving towards the end. Just two more concepts to be clear. One, stimulus generalization. Now, what do you mean by stimulus generalization? What do you mean by generalization? Generalization is when something becomes generalized or common. Okay? Something which is common to many people. Like for example, in school, every child wears the same uniform. It is common. It is generalized. Okay? Right. Now, stimulus generalization is a simple principle. Similar stimuli will give me similar responses. Okay? Let's go back to that ice cream example. Suppose I love ice creams. All right. Now, if I love ice creams, then chances are that I will love almost all flavors of ice cream. So you give me chocolate flavor, you give me strawberry, you give me butterscotch, I'm going to enjoy it because in general, look at the word general, I love ice cream. Okay. So if for me ice cream is something which makes me happy, then I don't care what the flavor is. Every ice cream will give me the same response, happiness. Similar stimuli will give me similar responses. It is a tendency to give similar stimuli to similar response to similar stimuli. Suppose exams scare you. Okay, suppose you are very scared of exams. You get nervous and anxious with exams. Then every type of exam will scare you. Whether it is a class test, whether it is just somebody asking you simple 2-3 questions, or whether it is a job interview. Any type of examination will create anxiety. Similar situation will produce similar response. This is what we call as stimuli generalization. Okay? Look at the examples. A child punished by one teacher may become scared of all teachers. Okay? If one teacher has punished the child severely, now maybe the child will become little scared of all other teachers. Or if you see a woman who looks like your mother, now usually mother is a person we love. Most of us love our mothers, right? So if you see a woman who looks very similar to your mother, you will be attracted to that person. You will want to be close to that person. Okay, you will feel warm towards that person because she reminds you of somebody you like a lot, you care for a lot. Okay, so similar stimuli will produce similar responses. What did Pavlov do with the dog over there? Now, like we saw, when the bell rang, dog started salivating. The dog had learned. Now, what Pavlov did was, Pavlov said, let's replace this bell with some other similar sounding sound. Okay. So earlier it was that regular manual bell. Okay. Pavlov replaced that with electric bell. But because after that food came, the dog showed similar response. Suppose you play guitar or piano, it's a different sound from the bell. But if you're going to give food after every such sound, the dog will not show any difference. The dog will still produce saliva. Okay, whether it is piano, whether it is guitar, whether it is electric bell or any other similar sounding bell. Okay, as long as food comes. Because food is coming, the dog will realize that all sounds give me food. So I don't care what kind of sound it is. I am going to salivate because the food is going to come. If one teacher has punished you, you are scared of all other teachers, irrespective of who the other teacher is. If you have been caught traveling without ticket by one TC, you're going to be scared of all TCs. It doesn't matter who that person is. As long as that person has a uniform, you are going to be scared because you were once caught traveling without ticket. Okay? Stimulus, generalization. And then we have something opposite, stimulus, discrimination, where you learn discrimination, difference, where you learn the difference between one stimuli and another stimuli. Okay. Now, what did Pavlov do? Pavlov decided, okay, let's play another game with the dog. So, when the regular bell rings, food comes, dog salivates. But with another type of a bell, okay, the bell came, but food did not come. So you have bell A and you have bell B. When bell A sounded, food comes. When bell B sounded, food does not come. And the sounds are different. Okay, both the bells have a different sound. With the first bell, food comes. Second type of bell, food doesn't come. After many trials, the dog learned the difference. The dog learned to discriminate between two bells, between two stimuli. The dog learned that this one gives me food, but that one does not give me food. So what did the dog do? When the first bell was sounded, it started salivating. But when the second bell was sounded, dog just ignored it. Okay, there was no response. Different stimuli producing different responses. The ability to differentiate between different stimuli. Now, stimulus generalization helps you to distinguish between right and wrong. This is how our parents taught us what is good and what is bad, what is allowed and what is not allowed. I can eat food from the plate, but if that same food is fallen down on the ground, now I cannot pick it up and eat because now it has become infectious, contaminated. How did I learn that difference? When I was a child, when I was a baby, it made no difference to me. Every child will pick up food from the mud and happily eat it. But we parents teach that, okay? So if the child is eating from the plate, we don't mind. But if the child tries to pick up the chocolate from the floor, we immediately stop the child, okay? So slowly the child learns that food can be eaten from the plate, but not once it is fallen down on the ground. You are learning to differentiate one from the other. Look at the example. You learn that if you're driving, then you're supposed to stop at red light, but not at the green light, okay? Because you know that red light means now this is the traffic signal. That's a rule. And therefore, you're learning the difference between two colors, red and green. You will respond to your name, but you will not respond to your another name which sounds similar to your name. Okay, my name is Zarin. If somebody calls Zarin, I'll immediately look back. But there may be so many names which are rhyming with Zarin. If somebody uses that particular name, I'm not going to turn behind because I know it sounds similar, but it's not me, right? So that is where we learn the difference between one and another stimuli. And that is why we call it stimulus discrimination. And finally, we are now coming towards the end. In a nutshell, everything that we have done up till now, this slide will give you a summary of the gist of our entire session. on classical conditioning. So classical conditioning talks about pairing stimuli and response. Unconditional stimulus gives you unconditional response. Natural stimulus gives you natural response. Learned stimulus gives you learned response. Conditional stimulus gives you conditional response. Okay? When you pair something natural with something learned, you get a response which is the same. Okay? So unconditional stimuli and conditional stimuli, when they go together, you will still produce the same response. Learning has taken place. Then we spoke about higher order conditioning, how you keep on learning more and more and more as long as the response keeps coming. We also spoke about extinction and spontaneous recovery. If you're not getting the desired stimuli, then you stop responding. Extinction. After a long break, chances are you will forget what was extinct, and you will immediately remember the original learning. Spontaneous recovery. And finally, we saw the difference between stimuli generalization and stimuli discrimination. Okay. Now, I understand that if you're doing this topic for the first time, it can be very heavy for you. It can be little challenging and slightly confusing also. And that is why the recording will be there on YouTube and you can keep on revisiting it. Okay, all the slides are going to be available to you. You can go back and revisit till you are finally able to master. Okay, you are free to ask your queries even later on in the comments, and I will be happy to solve your queries. Okay. Thank you very much everybody for attending today's session. I hope this has been useful to you, and we will be continuing with our discussion in the future sessions. You can also find me on any of these media accounts on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook and LinkedIn. For any tips on mental health, you just have to search for Dr. Zarin Sethna and I will be available. Thank you, Urvi, Dr. Urvi. Oh, lovely. That's a beautiful comment. Yes, you are right. Yes. Holocaust trauma being triggered by the sight of uniform. That's what I was saying. If one uniformed officer has, punished you for something, you are likely to become scared of everybody and anybody in uniform or in authority. Yes, Dr. Urvi, you are absolutely correct. Yeah. Thank you for this. Thank you for this insight. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. And with this, we end the session. Have a happy evening, everybody. Nilesh Pandey, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nilesh, for your lovely comment. My pleasure. My pleasure. I'm glad it is resonating and reaching so many people. My pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody. And have a happy evening. And with this, we stop today's session and we'll meet later again. Keep watching YouTube so that you get the